500 years ago, a disgraced Italian diplomat sat in exile, banned from politics, his career destroyed. In his bitterness and isolation, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote something that would shake the foundations of how we understand power, attraction, and human nature. But here's what most people don't know. The Prince wasn't just about political power. Embedded within Machiavelli's ruthless observations about ruling kingdoms were brutal truths about attraction, relationships, and the dynamics between men and women that remain shockingly relevant today. Machiavelli understood something that modern society desperately tries to deny. Human beings, regardless of gender, are driven by self-interest, respond to strength, and are attracted to power. Not the politically correct version of power, real power. And the lessons he wrote about maintaining a kingdom apply with disturbing accuracy to modern dating and relationships. This is Behind the Mind, and today we're examining Machiavelli's most controversial insights through the lens of attraction and relationship dynamics. These aren't comfortable truths. They're not what you'll hear from relationship coaches or self-help gurus. They're observations from one of history's most brilliant and most brutally honest minds about how power, respect, and attraction actually work. Let's begin. Lesson 1. It is better to be feared than loved. The original context. Machiavelli's most famous quote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Most people stop there and think it's advice to be a tyrant. But read the full passage and you'll understand the psychology behind it. He wrote this because he observed that love is fickle, conditional, and easily withdrawn. Fear, or more accurately, respect mixed with the understanding that there are consequences, is more reliable. Now apply this to modern relationships and attraction. The nice guy paradox. The modern nice guy believes that being agreeable, accommodating, and desperately kind will create attraction. He thinks that if he's nice enough, loving enough, giving enough, she'll love him back. Machiavelli would have recognized this immediately as the mentality of a weak prince who tries to buy loyalty through generosity while having no capacity to enforce respect. And what happens to such princes? They get overthrown. What happens to such men? They get friend-zoned, cheated on, or left for someone who actually commands respect. Respect before love. Here's the uncomfortable truth that Machiavelli understood. Respect must come before love, not after. You cannot be loved without first being respected. And respect doesn't come from niceness, it comes from boundaries, standards, and the willingness to enforce them. A man who will tolerate anything, accept any behavior, overlook any disrespect because he's in love is not loved in return. He's tolerated, he's convenient, he's useful, but he's not respected and therefore cannot be genuinely desired. The modern translation. Better to be respected than merely liked. The man who maintains his standards, enforces his boundaries, and is willing to walk away from disrespect will be more attractive than the man who sacrifices everything to avoid conflict. This doesn't mean being abusive or cruel. It means being willing to prioritize your dignity over keeping someone who doesn't respect you. The scarcity of respect. Machiavelli observed that people respect what they cannot easily control or manipulate. A prince who gives away his treasury will be loved temporarily until the money runs out. Then he'll be despised for having nothing left to give. A man who gives away his time, his boundaries, his standards, his dignity, hoping this generosity will be rewarded with love, will face the same fate. Once he's given everything, he has nothing left that makes him valuable or attractive. Respect is maintained by having something worth respecting. Standards, boundaries, self-worth that doesn't depend on another person's approval. The balance. Machiavelli actually advocated for both, being attractive, commanding respect, having options, maintaining standards, and caring, being genuinely invested when that investment is reciprocated. The key is the order: respect first, love second. not love desperately offered in hopes that respect will follow. The consequences of love without fear. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are less hesitant about harming someone who makes himself loved than one who makes himself feared." In relationships, people are less hesitant about disrespecting, betraying, or leaving someone who has made themselves completely non-threatening, completely available, completely without options. The partner who knows you'll tolerate anything has no incentive to treat you well. The partner who knows you have standards and will enforce them has every incentive to meet those standards. Lesson 2. Fortune is a woman. The controversial passage. Machiavelli wrote one of his most controversial passages about fortune, fate, or luck. Fortune is a woman, and it is necessary, if you wish to master her, to conquer her by force. In his historical context, he was arguing that bold, decisive action defeats passive waiting, that fortune favors the aggressive, not the timid. This applies directly to attraction and modern dating. The passivity problem. Most men approach attraction passively. They wait for signs. They hint at their interest. They orbit women hoping to be noticed. They befriend women, hoping friendship will spontaneously transform into attraction. Machiavelli would have seen this as waiting for fortune to smile upon you while taking no action to create your own luck. The boldness advantage. Women, and humans generally, are attracted to boldness, not recklessness, but decisive action. The ability to see what you want and pursue it directly. The man who clearly states his interest, asks for the date, escalates physically when appropriate, and makes his intentions known is far more attractive than the man who lingers in ambiguity, hoping the woman will do the work for him. This isn't about aggression or disrespecting boundaries, it's about clarity and initiative. The cost of hesitation. Machiavelli observed that hesitation kills more opportunities than bold action. The prince who waits for the perfect moment to act usually finds that the moment has passed and his enemies have already moved. In dating, the man who waits for the perfect moment to make a move usually finds that someone bolder has already made that move. The window of attraction closes while he's still calculating odds and managing anxiety. Risk and reward. Every bold action carries risk. The woman might reject you. The conversation might be awkward. The date might not work out. But Machiavelli understood that avoiding risk doesn't eliminate loss, it guarantees it. The prince who takes no risks loses by default. The man who never shoots his shot never scores. The decisive moment. There's a moment in every potential romantic connection where someone needs to escalate, to ask for the number, to suggest the date, to go for the kiss, to define the relationship. The person who acts decisively in that moment has massive advantage over the person who hesitates, because hesitation signals uncertainty, and uncertainty is deeply unattractive. Fortune favors the bold. Machiavelli's observation, stripped of its dated metaphor, is this: life rewards action over inaction. Attraction rewards boldness over timidity, decisiveness over hesitation. Not stupid risks, calculated boldness. The courage to pursue what you want while accepting that rejection is a possibility. The man who can handle rejection and keep moving forward is infinitely more attractive than the man paralyzed by fear of rejection. Lesson 3. Appear virtuous, but act as necessary. The image versus reality. Machiavelli shocked readers by distinguishing between how a prince should appear and how he actually should operate. It is not necessary for a prince to have all the good qualities, but it is very necessary to appear to have them. This applies directly to attraction and social dynamics. The perception game. Modern dating is largely about perception management, not lying, but understanding that what people see is often more important than complete transparency about every thought and feeling. The man who broadcasts all his insecurities, all his neediness, all his desperation, even if he's being authentic, creates attraction-repulsion. The man who maintains an image of confidence, outcome independence, and self-sufficiency, even while working on those things internally, creates attraction. Strategic authenticity. This doesn't mean being fake, it means being strategic about what you reveal and when. Machiavelli would tell you, be actually developing yourself, building real value, creating genuine confidence. But don't broadcast your work in progress status to people who don't need to see it. Your struggles are for your journal and your closest friends, not for the person you're trying to attract. The oversharing problem. Modern culture celebrates vulnerability and authenticity to a toxic degree. Men are told to share every feeling, every insecurity, every moment of self-doubt. The result? They kill attraction by appearing weak, uncertain, and emotionally unstable. Machiavelli would advise, feel everything, process everything, but share selectively. Vulnerability has its place with people who've earned access to it after attraction and respect are established. The strength appearance. People are attracted to strength, not necessarily physical strength, but psychological strength, confidence, stability, capability. Whether you feel that strength in every moment is irrelevant. What matters is whether you can project it when it counts. This isn't deception, it's self-control. It's the ability to manage your presentation regardless of your internal state. The strategic revelation. Machiavelli understood that information is power. Every piece of information you reveal shifts the power dynamic. In relationships, revealing your complete interest level, your backup options or lack thereof, your emotional dependency, these all weaken your position. Strategic ambiguity maintains attraction. Mystery maintains interest. The person who seems to have options is more attractive than the person who clearly has none.
Lesson 4. Never show your weaknesses. The predator principle. Machiavelli observed that showing weakness invites attack. Neighboring kingdoms don't respect vulnerable princes, they invade them. In modern social dynamics and relationships, showing weakness, chronic complaining, obvious insecurity, emotional instability, invites disrespect and attraction loss. The emotional stability requirement. Women, and again this applies to human attraction generally, are attracted to emotional stability, to men who can handle stress without falling apart, to psychological strength. The man who broadcasts every anxiety, every moment of self-doubt, every emotional fluctuation is signaling instability, and instability is fundamentally unattractive because it signals inability to protect and provide. The stoic appearance. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions, it means processing them internally rather than using your romantic interest as your therapist. Machiavelli would approve of modern stoicism. Feel everything, but maintain composure. Deal with your problems, but don't make them everyone else's problem. The complaining trap. Chronic complaining is one of the fastest attraction killers. It signals victim mentality, inability to solve problems, and emotional weakness. Machiavelli's prince would never complain about his challenges, he'd be too busy solving them. The attractive man operates the same way. The resilience signal. Showing that difficulties don't break you, that you can face challenges without falling apart, is deeply attractive. It signals strength, capability, reliability. This doesn't mean pretending problems don't exist. It means handling them without drama, without emotional collapse, without needing constant reassurance. Strategic vulnerability. There's a time and place for vulnerability after you've established strength, after you've built attraction with someone who's earned your trust. But leading with vulnerability, making it your defining characteristic, is relationship suicide. First, be strong. Then, selectively, reveal the human being behind the strength. Lesson 5. Maintain power through unpredictability. The pattern breaking. Machiavelli advised princes to be somewhat unpredictable to their enemies. Never allow them to fully anticipate your next move. In attraction, complete predictability kills desire. The partner who is totally predictable, totally available, totally consistent becomes boring. The mystery maintenance. We discussed this earlier, but it bears repeating. Mystery creates attraction. The completely known quantity is less interesting than the person who still has depths to discover. The man whose every move can be predicted, whose schedule is entirely known, whose thoughts are completely broadcasted, he loses his intrigue. The availability paradox. Being completely available kills attraction, not because playing games works, but because genuine scarcity creates value. The man with a full life, genuine interests, pursuits, friendships, goals, is naturally less available and therefore more interesting than the man whose entire world revolves around his romantic interest. The behavioral variance. Don't be robotic. Don't follow rigid rules about when to text back or how often to be available. Instead, be genuinely engaged with your life. Sometimes you respond immediately because you're free, sometimes you don't because you're actually busy. This natural variance maintains interest. The emotional unpredictability. This is subtle. Don't be the guy who's always happy to see her regardless of her behavior. Have standards. Sometimes her behavior deserves warmth. Sometimes it deserves distance. This isn't manipulation, it's authenticity. Real humans have varied responses based on how they're treated. Be real. Lesson 6. Cruelty can be mercy. The counterintuitive wisdom. Machiavelli wrote that sometimes short-term cruelty prevents long-term suffering. A prince who is too merciful in dealing with rebels may allow a problem to grow until it requires much greater violence to solve. In relationships, being too nice to avoid short-term discomfort often creates long-term disaster. The honest rejection. The man who doesn't have the courage to reject someone clearly, who strings them along because he doesn't want to hurt their feelings, is being cruel through his cowardice. Machiavelli would say, be direct. The short-term pain of clear rejection is merciful compared to the long-term pain of false hope. The boundary enforcement. Being too lenient with boundary violations, letting things slide to avoid conflict, seems kind in the moment, but creates entitled behavior and eventual relationship destruction. Clear, immediate consequences for boundary violations are kinder long-term than permissive tolerance that leads to escalation. The breakup execution. When a relationship needs to end, dragging it out is cruelty. Machiavelli advised, if you must do harm, do it swiftly and completely. Don't slowly fade away. Don't create ambiguity. Don't leave false hope. Make a clean break. It's kinder. The standards maintenance. Lowering your standards to avoid being alone seems kind to yourself, but it's actually cruel, both to you and to the person who doesn't meet your standards but you're settling for. Machiavelli would advocate maintaining high standards even when it's uncomfortable. Short-term loneliness is better than long-term resentment. Lesson 7. Be a lion and a fox. The dual nature. Machiavelli's most sophisticated advice. A prince must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. In other words, combine cunning with strength, intelligence with power, strategy with force. The intelligence approach, pure strength, pure dominance, pure directness, works until you encounter someone more cunning who outmaneuvers you. The fox approach, pure cunning, pure manipulation, pure strategy, works until you encounter someone who simply overpowers your clever schemes. You need both. Reading the game. Be intelligent enough to see manipulation when it's happening, recognize emotional games, understand social dynamics and power plays. Don't be the strong, dumb lion who gets played by every clever person who comes along. Having the strength. But also develop real strength, financial, physical, psychological, so that when you see the trap, you can simply refuse to play instead of trying to out-manipulate the manipulator. Don't be the clever fox who can see every game but lacks the power to walk away. The application. In relationships, be smart enough to recognize when you're being tested, manipulated, or played, but be strong enough that your response can simply be indifference and walking away rather than playing games in return. The attractive combination. The combination of intelligence and strength is devastatingly attractive. The man who can't be fooled, but also can't be pushed around. who sees the games but doesn't need to play them because he has genuine options.
Lesson 8. People judge by results, not intentions. The outcome focus. Machiavelli observed that history judges princes by their results, not their intentions. A prince who means well but fails is still a failure. In attraction and relationships, your intentions don't matter nearly as much as your results. The nice guy excuse. "But I meant well," doesn't save you. "But I really care," doesn't create attraction. "But I tried," doesn't maintain a relationship. What matters is whether you actually create the outcomes that make you attractive and make the relationship work. The results that matter. In attraction, are you actually interesting, actually confident, actually successful, actually desirable? Your intention to become those things is irrelevant. Only the actual state matters. The relationship results. In relationships, do you actually make your partner happy, actually create attraction, actually add value to their life? Your intention to do so without actually doing so is worthless. The action imperative. This is why Machiavelli would tell you to stop focusing on your feelings, your intentions, your struggles, and start focusing on your actions and their results. Nobody cares that you're trying to be confident. They care whether you are confident. Nobody cares that you mean to be successful. They care whether you are successful. Conclusion: the modern prince. The timeless wisdom. 500 years later, Machiavelli's observations about human nature remain disturbingly accurate, not because humans haven't changed, but because he understood the fundamental dynamics of power, respect, and attraction that transcend time and culture. The core lessons applied. If we strip away the historical context and apply Machiavelli's wisdom to modern relationships, respect must come before love. Maintain your dignity and enforce your boundaries. Be bold in pursuing what you want. Fortune favors decisive action over timid hesitation. Manage your image while building real substance. Appear strong while becoming strong. Never make your weakness your identity. Process your struggles privately while showing strength publicly. Maintain some mystery and unpredictability. Complete predictability kills desire. Sometimes short-term discomfort prevents long-term disaster. Be willing to enforce consequences and make hard decisions. Combine intelligence with strength. Be the fox who sees traps and the lion who doesn't need to play games. Focus on results, not intentions. Actually become attractive rather than just intending to. The ethical application. Machiavelli has been called evil, immoral, ruthless, but his actual advice was pragmatic. Understand reality as it is, not as you wish it were. You can use these insights ethically to protect yourself from manipulation, to build genuine attraction based on real value, to create relationships based on mutual respect rather than desperate neediness. Or you can ignore them and continue wondering why niceness, good intentions, and emotional availability aren't creating the results you want. The choice. Machiavelli wrote The Prince as a manual for maintaining power in a brutal world. Modern men need that same ruthless honesty about how attraction and relationships actually work. You can be offended by it, you can call it manipulative or toxic or problematic, or you can recognize that understanding power dynamics doesn't make you evil, it makes you informed. And in the game of attraction and relationships, being informed is the difference between being the prince and being the peasant. Call to action. This is Behind the Mind. If Machiavelli's lessons challenged your assumptions about relationships and attraction, hit that like button. Subscribe for more uncomfortable truths that actually work rather than comfortable lies that keep you failing. And comment below, which of Machiavelli's lessons do you think is most relevant to modern dating? Which one are you going to implement first? Let's build a community of men who understand reality clearly enough to navigate it successfully. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay strategic.